And the winner is... We have no idea who the winner is. Welcome to Roundtable. Good to have your company. I'm David Foster. At the hour when the winner's normally giving a victory speech, there was confusion. There were accusations, even threats, setting the stage for what could be a long and bitter election dispute.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop.
We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted, every ballot is counted. But we're feeling good. We're feeling good about where we are.
Well, right now we're going to try and make some sense, not so much of the result, the non-result, but of a system that seems at the very least a bit of a mess. We welcome in Washington, D.C., David Barker, Director of the Center for Congressional and Presidential Studies. We go to the West Coast, San Diego, California, and say hi to Laura Fink, Democratic strategist, and then to Maryland and Dee Dee Bass Wilbon, Republican and co-founder of Bass Public Affairs. This is for all of you. I'm going to start with David. When you have John Bolton, who used to work as national security advisor for Donald Trump, saying the president's comments that he'd won while votes were being counted was the most irresponsible thing a president has ever said, it is a disgrace. When you have something like that, it has turned really ugly, David.
Yes, it sure has. I mean, those comments are anti-democratic. They inspire violence, potentially, certainly division and polarization, but that's nothing new. We can, to be frank, I'm here in D.C. and I'm a little bit nervous about what we're going to observe in the streets over the course of the next day or two or three or however long it takes to finish counting these votes and the presumed legal challenges that follow.
So, Dee Dee, well, what's going on here?
I think that the president, he should not have, made those comments, but I don't think it's the worst thing that a president has said in our country's history. But it is very close, and we are still very optimistic and looking forward to all of the states and all of the votes being counted. And I believe that the president will definitely wait until all those votes are counted, and we're hoping that they'll be counted very soon. It is nerve-wracking, the waiting, but we will continue to wait for the process to play out the way that our country has always done.
Laura, is this sort of what many people had expected? No clear-cut result, confusion, backwards and forwards possibility of the courts. Is it something that you'd been anticipating?
Well, first of all, I would say that this is a strategy by President Trump to undermine the results of the election by condemning them before making legal challenges, as you suggest. But did we not think that the race could be close? I think observers knew the race could be close and also knew that states that are in contention, like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, have laws on the books that require them to count mail ballots starting only on election day, so they couldn't count them early, which means that if there was a close race, we knew we would be in this boat. So this is not unusual.
But that is the madness as well, isn't it? I mean, why not have a law? Why not change the law that preempts the problems that come when you can't count those mail-in votes until the last minute? Why not have them done weeks beforehand?
because that is part of the strategy. The Republican obstructionism around voter access and voter counting is something that is part of the strategy to win. And so these are legislatures that have these positions in place. They haven't been changed. And that is to the advantage of Republicans because they want, and it plays into Trump's hand in this instance. So
okay, well, you're making a party political point there. Let's get to the mechanics of it. And David, why not have them counted beforehand? It makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Of course, and several states do, but our federal system allows states to make their own decisions. We don't have one election in this country; we have 50 of them, and they all make any number of decisions independently as to election administration. And these states, for whatever reason, presumably legitimate ones, decided some time ago that they would wait until election day to begin counting. And part of that is because they want to give voters the opportunity to vote all the way up until the last possible second by whatever means is possible to them. That's not true in every state. Again, we have 50 different election administrations. But to your earlier point about did we expect this? Well, I would say that a year ago and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, this election looks pretty much exactly like what most of us might have anticipated. Extremely close, similar to 2016, maybe with the Democratic nominee doing a little bit better, but by no means a blowout. However, this is looking quite different from what we were anticipating over the course of the past several weeks. While the polls do not seem to have been off in some states that are within the margin of error, there does appear to be a significant polling error, again, even larger than there was in 2016, certainly in Florida, perhaps in Wisconsin, where it looks like Biden will ultimately win, but maybe only by a percentage point or something like that.
Surely the polls, therefore, I mean, we've seen this before, surely the polls now can have no credibility whatsoever.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, again, let's see where the national polls end up. In 2016, the national polls were very, very good. It may be the case that that's, again, true here. And again, in many of these states, they're either dead on or within the margin of error. But there are a couple of states that are clearly well beyond that. And we need to figure out what is going on now for 2 cycles in Wisconsin and Florida, at least for sure.
Okay, Dee Dee, I'm going to come to you now, and I'm going to bring up some newspaper headlines from around the world. What has been said, in fact, the madness that is the US election, Russian TV presenter, the United States of anxiety, that's in the Indian Express, a threat of civil war, Iran Press TV, the US holds its breath, La Stampa in Italy. What does this say about the United States, Dee Dee?
It doesn't sound very good, especially when you have different organizations saying that they will absolutely start rioting and looting if the president declares victory, which I think that, and I don't condone bad behavior on either the left or the right. And I think that everyone has a right to protest peacefully. And I think that that to come out and say that you are definitely going to riot if the president declares victory is just not the right thing to do in any circumstance. And I think that, if we just allow the process to play itself out, and if your candidate loses, you continue to move forward 1 foot in front of the other. If your candidate wins, you continue to move forward 1 foot in front of the other. And you accept the results as they are. And and so I think
Laura, Dee Dee, I get what you're saying. Laura, the United States of anxiety.
The United States, I mean, that is certainly true because, we've had that state since Trump was elected because he sows the seeds of division. And so there are nations that do like to laugh at that, do like to see that as an advantage strategically for them. But ultimately, this is a challenge of political polarization, which we have to contend with. And we have a candidate and a president like Trump that seeks to fan those flames. And so Biden's attempt to bring America together and to unify, well, we can see the result, at least from the polling, or excuse me, the exit numbers and the results so far are that we are in a similar place as 2016 when Trump was first elected, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the economic crisis. Those seeds
Yeah.
of division
No,
have
I don't
grown.
want to make party. I don't want anybody to be here making party political. I want to try and understand how we've got to this particular situation. Apologies for interrupting you, Laura, but I want to come back to the mechanics of this. And David, let me ask
Okay.
you. The madness that is the US election, Russian TV presenter saying that. And when you look at it, the antiquated system of the Electoral College, where just a number of people, around about 539, I think it is, make a final decision on who goes to the White House, which was brought in partly to appease those people who were slave owners in the 1700s. It needs changing, doesn't it?
I mean, a lot of people certainly think so. You know, the fact that one person equals one vote is not the case in the United States, and it never has been. Certainly doesn't speak well for our democracy. But in some ways, entertaining that option is a fool's errand because it's not going to happen. To amend the Constitution to do that, we would need a 2/3 majority in Congress as well as 3/4 of the states to ratify that. And that's not going to happen because that would require many states making a decision that is against their personal self-interest. And so much, regardless of how we feel about the Electoral College, it is here to stay for the foreseeable future.
Well, it seems like there's nothing that can be done to change it.
That's right. I mean, until a much larger number of states perceive that this system is not in their own states' personal self-interest, then they're not going to change it. And so it is what it is.
David, let me throw this one at you. Former UK Foreign Secretary, equivalent of the Secretary of State. His name is Jeremy Hunt. He's tweeted, "Dear American friends, the reputation of democracy is at stake and the world is watching. Please proceed carefully." How damaging, David, is this to the reputation of your country?
Well, which aspect? The re-election of President Trump, or just the fact that we're having a difficult time counting ballots, or whatnot? I mean, I'm not sure at this point that anything has happened that's particularly damaging, right? I mean, we tried our best to allow people to vote as best they could during a pandemic via a number of different means, through early in-person voting, mail voting, lots of same-day voting, and now we just have to count those votes. And so they will count those votes, and at some point in the coming hours or days, we'll find out who won the election. All the votes will eventually get counted, and whoever won will be declared the winner.
But threats of court action, that's pretty damaging, isn't it, to the reputation?
People can threaten all that they want to. What matters is ultimately what those courts decide. If those courts were ultimately to decide to side with the president on this and say, well, yep, I suppose we can't vote or we can't count any of those mail-in ballots that were cast legally before the deadline. If that were to happen, then that would be like something you would expect to find in a banana republic. But I don't think anybody actually expects that to happen. The president can bluster all he wants, and he can try to make what is probably going to be a loss look better all he wants. But at the end of the day, all the votes are likely to be counted, and the winner will be declared.
Dee Dee, is it just bluster, do you think, from Donald Trump?
I think the president, in regards to going to court, if it comes to that, then it comes to that. I agree with David. I think that if we're going to allow the votes to be counted, every single vote, every early vote, every mail-in vote, we're going to allow all those votes to be counted. And I think that the president, he is insinuating that we may need to go to court. Not that it's a bad thing, but if we have to go to court, then we have to go to court because that's what our courts are there for. If there is a decision that needs to be made, and they're there to make those decisions.
But he's recently loaded the court with somebody who's more inclined to agree with him.
But the individual that he put on the court, Amy Coney Barrett, I think she's amazing. She's qualified to be on the court. And I don't think that putting her on the court is a guarantee. Again, when she was doing her confirmation, she stated several times that she would go by the law. She would look at all of the information that's set before her, whatever case was set before her, but that she was not going to favor any one particular person or any one particular issue. She was going to look at the information that's presented, as a judge should do in all cases.
But
I would
as we
agree
know,
with that.
perception is, yeah, sorry, David, I'm just going to say, as we know, perception is everything, and people will, whatever Amy Coney Barrett says about herself, people are going to draw their own conclusions. David, sorry.
I was just going to say, with respect to Amy Coney Barrett, just because she happens to be an ideological conservative and her legal, jurisprudence philosophy may be conservative, and that may affect things like, her view on the legitimacy of the right to privacy and therefore a woman's right to choose. That doesn't necessarily mean that she would be inclined to do something like allow Trump to declare victory in a race where all the votes have not been counted. That would be very, very different, and I'd be extremely surprised if Barrett, conservative though she is, were to do something like that.
Laura, I interrupted you a little bit earlier. Apologies for that. But I want to go back to the thing that I mentioned from Jeremy Hunt, former UK Foreign Secretary. Democracy is at stake here. Do you see it as seriously as that?
I do. I think democracy is at stake, and it is in every election. And we've seen close elections before. And one of the things I wanted to mention that's very heartening about this election, in spite of its closeness, is the sheer number of people who turned out to vote. In terms of eligible voters, we have not met this threshold, this high a turnout, since 1900, which means voters in the United States are energized and they're submitting their ballots. With the expansion of mail voting, we also saw access like never before. And of course, that varied state to state. But I think overall, there is a surge in desire to participate in American democracy, and that cannot help but be a good thing for our country and for democracies to see around the world.
I totally agree. I have an 18-year-old son who actually voted. An 18-year-old son who voted for the first time, and we went to vote together yesterday, and he was so excited as a college student, a college freshman, to be able to exercise his right to vote. He was very excited and for the entire process, and was on the phone with me last night looking at the results. So I think that, our country is very energized, and with the early voting turnout and the turnouts yesterday on actual election day, there were so many people who wanted to actually vote on election day. So we had record number turnouts on yesterday as well. So I think it's an amazing thing, and I think it's going to continue, and it allows our country and every individual to be engaged in what is going to affect them and their families.
Dee Dee, I'm going to put this one to you and to Laura. I was reading this morning that the economy was top of voters' concerns and not COVID. Is that a surprise to you, Dee Dee, or is it pretty obvious? And anyway, the two are linked.
No, to me, it's not a surprise. The economy is very important. As a small business owner myself, and a family-owned business, the economy is extremely important. We are concerned about COVID, and we do want to, and I think the president, in regards to how it's been handled, I said earlier that I am so okay with the way that it has been handled, not coming out aggressively, expressing exactly what was happening, and making sure there was not mass hysteria. But I think that the economy is extremely important on Americans' minds. We do want to open things back up safely, and I think that we are doing the right things and taking the steps to do that.
Laura, do you think the Democratic Party overplayed the importance of COVID when it comes to the electorate, not in terms of health, but in terms of where they wanted to vote?
Oh, absolutely not, because voters suggested that they were very aware of the link between the economy and getting a handle on COVID. And I think we're seeing that play out in the polls now, at the polls. And so I don't think I think Americans understand that by and large. I mean, I think Trump's base is strong, and they like to see Trump no matter what. And I think the other thing the Trump campaign did very, very well was organize and engage new voters. And I think we'll probably see see that when more data comes out on how the votes broke down. But in terms of overall message and persuasion, the Democrats' job was to talk about the realities that Americans face every day, and COVID is chief among them. And the president has badly mishandled it. I think you see that in terms of the surge in turnout. It played into the margins that Biden has secured in the suburbs and in places where he did better, in fact, than Hillary did in 2016. So no, I don't think it was a mistake. And I also think, let's bear in mind that now
I'm going to have to go to David.
Michigan,
I'm going to have to go to David right now because we're getting to the business end of the program.
I was just finishing one sentence, but okay.
Well, you never know how long they're going to go on. That's the thing. If somebody says, and just one more thing. David,
well,
what is the process?
As Kamala would say,
now?
I'm speaking.
What's the process now with regard to
Michigan,
courts?
Wisconsin, Nevada, all leaning Biden right now. So I think that before we make grand pronouncements, we should note that as we stand currently.
David, with regard to the courts, what happens now?
Well, there'll be these challenges in individual state courts, right? To whether they can count these votes, and there may be other legal challenges as well. I don't exactly know what all they're filing, but after that, right, those decisions may be appealed, and ultimately, we may find ourselves in a situation where the Supreme Court weighs in again, as they did in 2000. But I frankly find that unlikely. I think that they'll again file these challenges in individual states, specifically Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, especially. And then, in all likelihood, right, those courts will conclude that those votes have all been legally cast and must be legally counted. And I expect that's where it'll end. But I don't, frankly, know for sure.
If I remember rightly, going back to 2000, there is a time limit before which the Electoral College has to cast its votes. And what would that be in this case when it came to any legal challenge?
It's in early January, as I recall. I forget the exact day on which the Electoral College meets. But that's exactly right. There is a limit of a few weeks when everything has to be finalized and determined, and then the Electoral College will meet and cast its vote, and we'll go from there.
Dee Dee and then Laura, and I won't shut you up on this occasion. Dee Dee, America seems more divided on the day after the election than it was at any time perhaps in the last 4 years. Things are getting worse in terms of polarization rather than better.
And you're asking why that is?
Well, first of all, if you agree with my statement, and secondly, why?
Well, I think that at Bass Public Affairs, we always say attack policy, not people. And I think if we as Americans just learn to discuss the policies and not attack individuals, there's an organization, and David, you might be familiar with it since you're in DC. It's called shutdowndc.org. And I wasn't familiar with the organization until 2 days ago, where they actually came out and said that they were going to start the rioting. And again, bad behavior on the left or the right is bad behavior, period. Bad behavior.
Okay, it's got to be fairly quick because time is our enemy. Laura, in terms of polarization, if only we had all the time in the world, Dee Dee, but in terms of polarization, why is America as divided as it appears to me and other observers?
I think there were seeds of division, particularly racial division in this country, that have been capitalized on by this president. He has sought division as a political strategy, and he uses it to his advantage, and at whatever cost. So sowing those seeds, sowing hate, using language of division, supporting hate groups,
but that's why he came to power, wasn't it? Because America was divided,
but
and so many people felt unrepresented.
But he does not support hate groups, and he's never said that he supports a hate group.
Good people on both sides.
Chime in on polarization?
And I think if you listen to that clip completely and fully, you'll understand he did not say those exact words. So please
you
go back and listen to the entire
clips, but that's any clip. Tomorrow,
listen to them all.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop both of you and go to David.
That's why they have sound bites, because then you just have those things that people just hone in on, and that's what those were.
Aside from that, a couple of reasons for the polarization. You know, over the course of the past 50 years, our politics have become much more personal, you know, in terms of our social identities, right? So there's a huge racial divide, a huge gender divide, a huge religious divide, a huge education divide, a huge age divide. And so when all of your personal characteristics overlay on top of your politics, your partisanship, it's no surprise then that it's much more personal to us. The second thing is that our media consumption habits have changed so dramatically, where we really do live in two realities. We get our information from two completely different sources. We believe entirely different things. There really are two Americas, and they don't have very much in common.
And in regards to that media part that you mentioned, David, what we need to do is that we need to listen.
We're out of time. We are totally out of time, Dee Dee. Just interesting, perhaps I've just picked up this book, read it 25 years ago. It's called The White House Mess. It's about when things go wrong in Washington politics. Very funny, but maybe too close to the truth. Thank you all very much indeed for coming on this roundtable. From me, David Foster. We thank you wherever you're watching this program. We'll see you next time, I hope. Goodbye.